the Williams brand, we're one of the longest standing teams in Formula One, and we're very much positioning to our partners that it's about being with us on this journey or this mission, more so to return Williams to the front of the grid, and not just single championship, but multiple championship success.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Pundit Podcast, the show for people shaping the future of sport. Driven by my curiosity working in the industry, I've brought together leading executives to host conversations with decision makers across innovation, marketing, media, finance, and performance, unpacking their strategies and industry-shaping ideas. On today's episode of the Sports Pundit Podcast, I'm joined by James Bauer, the commercial director at Atlassian Williams Racing, one of the most iconic teams in Formula One, that's now in the midst of a bold resurgence both on and off the track. James began his career at HP during its title partnership with Williams, before joining McLaren in 2007, where he worked on the Vodafone partnership and rose through senior roles in partner management, business development, and commercial strategy. Now working directly at Williams, James leads a 35-person team across London, Grove, and New York, responsible for the acquisition and management of brand partnerships that now generates more than 50% of the company's total revenue. Since joining in 2021, James has helped secure a wave of high-profile deals with brands like Atlassian, Komatsu, Duracell, Golf, Kraken, and Myprotein, as part of a deliberate shift towards quality over clutter. In this conversation, we explore the thinking behind Atlassian's record-breaking title partnership, how Williams is differentiating itself commercially in an increasingly crowded space, and the success of their fan zones, a growing series of immersive city centre activations that are bringing the sport to hundreds of thousands of fans in new and inclusive ways. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with James Bauer. To kick things off, James, you could just give us a little bit of background into your journey to Williams, which I think is a little bit of a full circle moment, given you started at a sponsor that was working with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally correct. I think being a commercial director at Williams is definitely a full circle moment. My first kind of professional corporate role was an undergraduate internship for a year at Hewlett Packard. So back in 2003, supporting a corporate sales team. So essentially a team selling to very large corporations, large IT solutions. And it's through that I had exposure to actually arranging visits to Williams, to the Experience Center, helping the sales team to try and close deals with sort of CIOs and decision makers by leveraging the Williams partnership. I also just got to experience just how it was used internally, the sort of buzz on the sales room floor on the Monday after a race, after the team had a good result, how it was leveraged in advertising campaigns and in marketing. I wasn't a big F1 fan, and then I went into some tech roles, and then was then contacted about a role at McLaren back in 2007, and joined the partner management team then. That was the year that Lewis Hamilton got the drive with McLaren, that they launched the Vodafone partnership. I was very fortunate to work on. And then, a long kind of period at McLaren, 14 years through the ranks of partner management, then into more of a kind of strategy role. So I helped create new platforms that would help attract new partners. So things like the first esports racing competition in F1 in 2017, a lot of work around understanding the fan base, and then leading the team that created all the partnership, new business proposals, pitches during the period that Zach Brown joined the team up until I left in 2021. And it was actually when I was doing the work around understanding the brand more in terms of the fan base, so fan segmentation, brand tracking. When I was doing that work at McLaren, I could see that a number of the things that were attractive for a team to be number one for in the minds of fans, Williams was number one for. It just didn't have the share of voice, really through track performance and partnerships and investment to really leverage that. So that was one of the kind of data-led points that gave me the nudge to jump across to Williams in 2021. And it's an incredible time to join the sport. But, as you know, with the tailwinds of the massive growth over the last sort of 5 years, and also the new ownership of Williams and how that ownership has invested in the team and grown the team.
Yeah, there's a ton to unpack there, but I think maybe the place I want to start is obviously having worked brand side for HPE and now going back into Williams. How's you talk about the commercial, growth and resurgence of F1 and the tailwinds that have been in F1 sales since probably like 2019 or whenever Liberty took over. How have you seen the commercial proposition change in terms of what a partner now expects and can gain from, I guess, working with a team versus when you were working, on an F1 partnership back in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I think we used to talk about F1 being a global sport, and the reality is it wasn't really true at the time because the sport wasn't big enough in North America. As you know, there'd been a history in North America, or in the US specifically, but really that all changed after the Grand Prix had a stable home in Austin, and then as we saw when Liberty purchased the sport and invested in growing the number of races in the US, in things like Drive to Survive, in opening up digital and social media. So that, of course, has just massively grown the sport and increased the diversity of the audience. So we're really just seeing that growth, and that's changed the brands that are coming into the sport. I think before as well, it was dominated by B2B brands. We're now seeing a lot more B2C brands come into the sport, again, because of that increasingly diverse audience.
Yeah. And you talk about developing that American audience. I'm particularly curious to understand how Williams is developing their own unique relationship with that US audience. So I think you've set up an office in New York and started to create more of a physical presence. I'm located near Milton Keynes, so I'm very much an F1 valley, and I guess all the teams are within a pretty close proximity of one another. So I guess that's an interesting move to create some sort of commercial presence in another market.
Yeah, absolutely. If I just think about my own kind of journey with the team, when I joined in 2021, there were 4 people in the commercial team, so a couple in partner management and kind of one in insights and another person. And the broader marketing team was probably about 30 people. Today we are across Williams commercial and marketing, we're 125 people, and that's predominantly in central London, where I'm talking to you from today, near Soho. We obviously have our headquarters in South Oxfordshire, and then an office in Tribeca in New York that we've had for a few years. We've got about 25 people based out there. And just going to your question about how we grow the audience, we have a number of kind of sports marketing professionals in that Tribeca, New York office, and their background is NFL, it's NBA, NHL, it's like big US sports, and they're helping us with our digital and social media strategy and how we grow that audience. And then to be present in that market and not be visiting, we're already based out there. And that helps us with both acquiring new partners, but then how we kind of activate and engage with those partners too. It's really important part of our strategy.
Since bringing in those commercial people that have come from other sports, I'm curious to understand how that's changed, I guess, the way that you approach brands and the way that you maybe activate with brands as a result, because, the US in particular has been very good at commercializing itself and, I guess, leveraging brand partnerships, maybe more so than European sport has typically done in the past. So, is there lessons, I guess, from the NFL or other, American entities that have sort of then transcended across to how you now operate the commercial team at Williams?
Yeah, I think one great example is my colleague, Aidan Lyons, who leads a lot of our fan engagement. He was SVP of fan engagement at the NFL. He led a strategy around, again, which was taken from the kind of NFL playbook, which was not every fan can kind of go to the game, or in our case, go to the race. And you need to engage with those fans, but away from the racetrack. So we actually invest and run, from a brand perspective, what we call fan zones. So we had 9 of those in city centre locations, and they're free to access. So last year we had 9 in cities, such as Miami, Las Vegas, in Austin. For the Japanese Grand Prix, we held one in Tokyo, which is hours away from where the race is. For the British Grand Prix, we held one at Piccadilly Circus underneath the iconic LED lights. And that experience will typically run from a Monday to a Sunday, and it's free for fans to actually enter the experience. And the whole thing is about accessibility and bringing our team and our sport close to the fans and making it a tangible experience. And it was actually born from insights to do with surveys that we were running on our digital channels, asking fans about what they liked, that led to the insight, along with the experience from the NFL to run those fan zones. So they're great from a fan perspective, obviously from a brand perspective as well, and then for our partners, providing them with this platform where they can activate the fans and drive different objectives through that platform.
Yeah, I can imagine, from a brand perspective, it's a dream because there's a lot of brands in Formula One. It's a very crowded space if you're looking at all the cars together at an F1 event, all the brands activating. So to have a physical location that's kind of separate from the race where everyone is there specifically engaging with Williams rather than kind of like the whole F1 ecosystem where maybe there's a lot of competing noise across categories and things. I can completely understand why a brand would really like that opportunity to physically connect. And it also, I think, touches on maybe like a broader community trend or a broader kind of societal trend at the moment, which is sort of people wanting in-person experiences and wanting to connect with one another. And like, I think you mentioned it at the start in terms of people watching F1 from home, like F1 is quite a TV-centric sport. But having these watch parties or the ability to kind of like get together, but also be, getting that experience because not everyone can go to the races. It feels like a big winner.
100%. And again, when we look at that kind of new wave fan base in detail, they love live experiences, not just the races, but anything they can engage with. And then when they engage with those experiences, they amplify them, right? They're the people that will amplify them on digital and social media, get their friends into it, that will talk about it. So they're disproportionately, valuable from that perspective. And when we think about when you think about F1 at the moment as well, this new wave fan base that comes into the sport, as I said, they've come in through things like Drive to Survive, like new digital and social media access. So there's an openness and accessibility to that they want to see kind of continued in how they engage with a team and with a brand. And that fan zone provides us with that platform of doing that in a consistent way. But it's not just physical experiences; it's how we approach our content as well, online and social media, providing the same sort of accessibility that honestly I think is more unique to us because we're an independent team. We're not owned by a large car manufacturer or another parent company. So the team, through that independence, has this inherent openness within the brand and this kind of accessibility that we're trying to build up through experiences like the fan zones.
Yeah, and I think the flywheel effect of kind of having the like physical to social element as well of like, okay, you're doing a physical event and that reaches people, but then those people almost become influencers for Williams in that they're posting photos with Williams merch or next to a replica car or with a cardboard cutout of Carlos Sainz or someone speaking on stage that's like related to the Williams brand. So it almost then creates this whole like ecosystem of fandom. But speaking of drivers, I guess that's the one thing that's like the fan zones. I could see how you could scale those into other markets because, like, you mentioned them being in the market of the event, right? So a lot of F1 races, take the UK for example, right? Silverstone isn't the easiest place to get to, so doing something in Piccadilly Circus makes a lot of sense. But I could see a world where you could have Williams fan zones in New York that same weekend for people that want to watch the Grand Prix in New York. I guess the one part that becomes trickier to scale is that kind of access to the drivers and access to also to James Vowles, who I think has like really built a strong personal brand as the leader of the team and as somebody that kind of is like leading this kind of resurgence of Williams. So I'm curious, like how do you kind of, I guess, continue to build how much of it relies on those personalities versus how much of it can you start to develop outside of the individuals?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with your point about James. If you go back to that kind of openness and accessibility, if you look at things like the Vowles Verdicts reoccurring content that we run, where James provides a debrief from the Grand Prix weekend, it's like it's so open and insightful. It's genuine insight, and he's very open and honest, which is what we are as a brand. And the point you mentioned is very sort of front of mind for us, which is you have these key markets, not just sort of New York, but if you think about these huge Western European markets that don't currently have a race, but have a huge F1 fan base, Germany, France. So the opportunity to create a fan zone experience in a non-race market is a huge opportunity and something we're very focused on. But we'll be doing it, with our partners again as a platform. And then there are other things that we can do to make those into broader experiences. Like last year, to promote the upcoming Grand Prix in Madrid, we ran a Formula One car on the streets, the new circuit in Madrid, with Carlos Sainz, and we had over 80,000 spectators go to watch that car running. We had people literally queuing up in crowds at like 6 a.m. and the car run wasn't until like late afternoon. So So again, there are other things that we can pull together to create these experiences. At the moment, the fan zones do have, one of the things that drives the footfall is the cadence of appearances from drivers to the team principal to our ambassadors like Jamie Chadwick and other members of the team that make it this really compelling experience. But we are working on plans about how we actually run those in some non-race markets at different points in the calendar as well.
Yeah. And from a commercial perspective, like obviously you have to work very closely with the drivers. Drivers also bring their own partners and their own kind of key markets, right? So Speaking of Carlos Sainz, like obviously the Spanish driver, and with that, Santander are a partner that followed him, I think, from Ferrari to Williams. So like, how do you balance, I guess, the commercial like partnerships that come with drivers versus kind of like existing partners or future partners that you're courting in certain categories, and how do you then activate, I guess, your sponsorships with those drivers?
Yes, the main thing is we want to support the drivers, to be successful both kind of on and off the track. So I think one of the things that's kind of front and center for me is how we can integrate the drivers into our broader partnership. So a great example from this season is that Kraken have run takeovers of Alex Albon's helmet livery, which he owns personally, but we've brought him into the partnership and actually provided Kraken with some access to like Alex's personal endorsement rights and put that into their agreement. So it's good for Alex. It's great for us and for Kraken because it's a more integrated campaign that just drives effectiveness for us. So we're increasingly focused on that. If you think about what the drivers are doing and from their own personal partnerships perspective, if they're looking at the market, there's a risk that a lot of things they may look at may conflict with things that we're looking at. So it's best to try and see if we can overlap those things and work together and ultimately, help them to be successful off the track with some of these commercial agreements by us collaborating with them. And the ultimate aim is, what drives effectiveness for our partners, and that is more integrated campaigns that features, the drivers and their personal endorsement rights, not just the team context. So that's definitely something we're focusing on, more at the moment.
This podcast is produced by O6, but more than just being a production partner, they're also active members of the Sports Pundit community. Having seen the work they're doing across the industry up close, working with leading F1 teams and Premier League clubs, as well as top creators, I'm so delighted to now have them on board and helping to elevate this show to a new level.
And since joining, like we mentioned it a little bit in terms of when I mentioned James Vowles, like this kind of resurgence, I guess, of the Williams F1 brand, which has obviously had a lot of success in the past and then hasn't maybe had that success up until this season, but now we're starting to see them on the podium. I guess this is being recorded a couple of days post Carlos Sainz getting his second podium of the season, which I'm sure you're all buzzing about still. And I guess like he spoke at the beginning of the season to sort of, I guess, caution people to say like, don't expect any podiums this season, right? Like that's to come further down the line. So maybe you're like slightly ahead of schedule in terms of seeing some of that on-track success than maybe what was expected. But I mean, it feels like there's really, really positive momentum behind Williams as that brand that is on the rise, that kind of, you've almost, although you've been around for a long time, have that kind of like startup or challenger brand, like iconography, I guess, amongst the grid, right? Because there's a lot of other British legacy brands that sit on the grid alongside you, whether that's McLaren where you were before or Aston Martin. So creating, I guess, that distinction as the kind of like the brand that's kind of on this growth trajectory. How important is that for you as you're speaking to brands, and in terms of attracting, I guess, like-minded brands like Atlassian, where they're also in a similar position to you of being a brand that's on a massive growth trajectory?
I think, first of all, thanks for the congratulations on the podium. It was an incredible result. And it was great to secure fifth in the championship before the end of the season. We're very much focused on next season, the largest rule changes probably in the history of the sport. But if I go back to kind of when I joined Williams in 2021, the business commercially had kind of gotten into this downward spiral of thinking that the performance of the brand was completely defined by the performance on track. And at the time, they were obviously, last in the championship. But actually, when you look at the brand in a data-led way, using blue chip kind of brand management processes that the type of brands that we want to partner with use, Williams had been the 5th most popular team in the sport for many years prior to that, through all the measurement. And we knew coming in that Aston Martin and Williams would vie for kind of 5th or 6th most popular team. But then second to that is the brand equity. The brand has incredible brand equity in the minds of fans. So number one for trust, for honesty, integrity, this independence as well, that again comes back to not being owned by another large company. And the team wasn't really leveraging that. So what we kind of did was really focus on that brand equity. And when you look at the brands that joined us on our journey first, the first brand was Duracell. It's the most trusted brand in its category, right? And it has a long heritage of innovation. So it sounds pretty crude, but it was literally just lining up the data points to demonstrate that started that conversation. You look at Kraken, the cryptocurrency exchange. Again, they pride themselves on being one of the longest standing brands in their category and the most trusted. So again, it's just lining up the brand equity, but doing it in a very data-led, demonstrable way, and in a way where we're then showing brands where we want to be and how we're tracking on that journey in terms of the growth of the Williams brand with certain segments of the fan base in certain markets, and the type of campaigns and marketing that we're running to achieve that. So, if I look back at 2021, there were 17 partners and the revenue was in the low single-digit millions. Now we're 14 partners and we're obviously significantly higher than that from a revenue perspective. But more importantly, we have brands that recognize the value of the IP and are investing in activating partnerships. Last year, we won more marketing awards for partner activation than any other F1 team. So it's been a complete turnaround in that respect, and fortunately driven by the investment that our owners are making into the team, and by, as I said before, this tailwind of just how big the sport is at the moment and how much it's growing. And then one of the most significant milestones, as you mentioned, is definitely the title partnership with Atlassian. And for me personally, what's so brilliant about that was that the two founders of Atlassian had this deep kind of reverence for Sir Frank Williams and for how he started Williams and how, as an entrepreneur, he built Williams to become this world-leading team. And the two founders started Atlassian with a $10,000 loan and have built it into this global leader. And then, more importantly, we are obviously integrating that technology in an incredibly meaningful way throughout the organization and how they are driving performance for the team. So it's definitely been a journey, and our approach to partnerships, though, is very much kind of like less is more. We're not planning to have, from the current 14 today, more than sort of 20, 24 partners over a long sort of timeline. So for us, it's about those partnerships being authentically integrated into the team and driving meaningful performance from both a racing perspective and also a kind of brand perspective, mutually for us and for them.
Yeah. You talk about kind of the authentic integration, which I think is something that F1 does a lot better than other sporting rights holders, right? Like, I think there's genuine use cases where, stuff is being piloted or new technology is being created, I guess, on the racetrack or in the labs and testing centers that are being used by the race teams, which I think is fascinating and something that you don't properly see. I think, like, quite often, if it's happening in other sports, it's finding a way to get to that use case, but like not necessarily something that's like pivotal to the operations or the business often. But I'm curious, like, are there workflows that exist within Williams right now that are unsponsored categories, I guess, where you're specifically bullish on opportunities or potential partners to come in and help you with whether it's digital transformation or some other element of the operations that you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as you'd be aware, the cost cap environment in Formula One means that if you look at 20 years ago, you would see a lot of kind of integration and case studies, but actually a lot of the time the teams probably didn't need the tech or the services or the products. And now in the cost cap environment, everything's accounted for, so it has to drive performance. It's not like a luxury; it has to drive meaningful performance. So for us, when we think about the brand as well, there's a number of things Williams is very strong for, and it had been very strong in the kind of 90s and early noughties around engineering innovation. But what we're really building the brand around now is emerging technology and putting technology and innovation very much at the heart of the transformation of the team. This is something that James Vowles has spoken about very openly. So I just say that because we believe that as we're not fighting for the championship currently, we have an opportunity to really innovate in terms of the platforms and the technology that we use. So it really starts with when we're looking at potential technology partnerships with our information technology team, looking at our technology stack, looking at our strategy and seeing the roles that different partners could play. Clearly, artificial intelligence, I mean, it's such a broad term. There are so many parts to it. But that as an emerging field is obviously front and center in terms of opportunities in Formula One. As the sport, I think, will increasingly move away from engineering innovation into kind of more into data science and other emerging areas. So that's a big focus for us. And I think you'll see more of that as we go into next year in terms of the partners that we'll be working with and how we build out that ecosystem. So yeah, that's a big focus.
Nice. I guess we're coming up towards time. We've spoken a bit about, the American ownership and the fact that you're, doing the fan hubs or the fan zones in New York, and you have an office in New York. And so you've built this presence in the US. And I wanted to ask you a question about kind of like what your ambitions are for the future. But obviously, one of the teams that's coming onto the grid soon is Cadillac, who are going to be trying to position themselves as the American team. So before we talk about the kind of like future plans for Williams, I just wanted to ask you kind of like how you're thinking about the Williams positioning in reference to the fact that there will be kind of like an American manufacturer on the grid soon. I'm assuming your answer is going to be around kind of like heritage and leveraging these other traits that are unique to Williams and being independent. But I'll let you answer that first, and then we can just close up with any other kind of like future ambitions or plans.
Yeah, I think the Williams brand, we're one of the longest standing teams in Formula One, as you'll be aware. It's Ferrari and then McLaren and then ourselves. We'll be celebrating 50 years of Williams in 2027, which is a huge milestone, not just for us as a team, but for the sport as well. It isn't about just looking backwards. It's about, as you say, from a positioning perspective, how we take all the really valuable brand equity and how we build on that for the future. So the US market is incredibly important. I'd say it's important for all the teams as well. So one of the things that makes the US market so unique is that F1 fans obviously follow multiple teams. So there are 10 teams competing to be 11 teams next year. 20 drivers currently. So particularly fans that are new to the sport, which is the largest segment of fans in the US, they don't necessarily have a favorite team. So I think over 60% currently say they don't have a favorite team and they're following multiple teams. So that's why it's such a big focus for us, because there's an opportunity to really grow the fan base. But we're also thinking about the next wave of growth, which I think will be Asia Pacific in terms of new races in that region. There's obviously a lot of talk around South Africa as well for a race. So, we really are looking at different regions, not just kind of all or nothing on one region. And I'd say in terms of, other teams, for me personally, it feels like we're at peak commercial competition in the sport, like right now today, because we have these new entrants that are coming in from Audi to Cadillac. We have, some of the most competitive racing we've ever seen in the sport currently as we come to the end of this regulation cycle. But that's sort of now. But as we hit the track next year and there's preseason testing, there's a start of the season, I think things will change slightly. So, the positioning is very important. I think for us, it's about how we continue to build that incredibly valuable brand equity, how we grow the fan base, and how we work with our partners to create value for them and to continue to grow the Williams brand.
Yeah. And I guess like as much as you want to tie those partnerships to performance to a degree, there's also an element of like not wanting to be completely leveraged based on performance, because as you say, if a regulation change is going to happen, like, you hope you're going to come out the right side of the regulation changes. But I guess there's situations in the past where a team that's been good in one cycle doesn't end up performing to the same level straight away when the regulations change. So I think it's and hopefully that's not the case for you guys. Hopefully you get a lot more podiums. I'd love to see Carlos and Alex on the podium more in the future. But I think it's very smart how you've strategically positioned the brand so that it's not, like you say, all or nothing on, securing track position in every single race.
Yeah, I think that, directionally for us, the milestones, we want to be race winning and profitable for 2028. And I think from a commercial perspective, we've never said to partners or prospects that we would be getting podiums this year. So to your point about performance, for us, the partnerships have to create value, and the performance becomes like an upside. And we're very much positioning to our partners that it's about being with us on this journey or this mission, more so to return Williams to the front of the grid, and not just single championship, but multiple championship success. And that is a lot of the value. So this season's been really positive development, but it was always about next season, and these results kind of came as almost just part of that process, which has been positive. But I think next season is going to be incredible for us, but also just for the sport, for the fans, to see this continue to grow, to see new brands, new teams coming into the sport. It really does feel like a new golden age. But then you look at the data and that the US has just got so much further to grow as well. So as do other regions. So long may it continue.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing a bit of your story, and best of luck for the final race of the season and going into 2026.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and appreciate your time, and congratulations on all the success with the podcast.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Pundit Podcast, kindly produced by the amazing team at O6. I'll include more information about the guests and the topics covered in the show notes. Head to sportspundit.co to find previous editions, access the newsletter, and to sign up for our WhatsApp group and see upcoming social events in cities around the world. See you again soon.